Okay, welcome everybody to our first webinar series. My name is Mujtaba Sarwar. I am the managing partner at Averou Immigration Services based out of Toronto. And with me today is Qasim Shamim, who has about 8 years of diverse education experience. He's specialized in teaching economics and business and, went to University of Michigan in the United States to get his master's in education. And today we will be discussing issues related to the admissions process for Canada and the UK, and then the visa process for Canada and UK. How are you doing today, Qasim?
Thank you so much, Mustafa. Thank you for the introduction. I'm doing great.
Hmm.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. So, as you know, we decided to host this webinar to kind of give our potential clients and not just clients, but anybody who might be interested in learning more about a very complicated area, which is the admissions process, both for Canada and the UK, and then also what it takes to go for visa. So, we're going to start with you since you are the expert at counseling students
Hmm.
on
Hmm.
how to get admissions into universities and colleges in the UK and Canada.
Correct.
Tell me, how many people would you say that you talk to per week in your practice?
Uh, I would say easily somewhere between 70 to 100 students per week.
That's and typically, what is sort of the first question that somebody might ask you when they come into your office?
They come with all sorts of questions. So, first of all, they would want to know if they are eligible for admission abroad. Then they would have specific preferences, like they are aiming for a certain destination, sometimes even specific cities within a certain country. So, for instance, they might have family in Calgary and they are looking for some college out of Calgary and so on. So, we need to first of all have a holistic understanding of what the student's educational background looks like, what his or her preferences are, aspirations. In terms of nowadays, career has become really critical, and you would know better that PR is possibilities, PR options, and all of that is very much dependent on whether you are in demand, doing an in demand study, or is your occupation in demand. So we also need to be mindful of those things as along with budget and along with other things.
Hmm. And in terms of guiding students into the right option, what kind of documents are you typically looking at, and what do you require from them? What will help you to make the best assessment
Yes.
where they fit?
Correct. So the first and the foremost thing is complete list of their academic documents. So that includes their transcripts, their degrees. So that's the first thing. Then comes English proficiency letter. Most of the times they're applying for an English speaking. They are applying to a country which is English is the official language. So that's something, and we have a whole spectrum that they can choose from. So we have IELTS, we have Duolingo, and some other tests. We'll talk perhaps more about that later in this discussion. Then they should have a passport, and letters of recommendations recently have become more and more important. Universities want to see if someone is recommending them, why so, and so on, and experience letters, especially for students who have gaps. So if they completed their last degree a few years back and then they have been in the job market, uh, the university would definitely want to have a look at what type of work they have done, and is their work along with their studies also relevant to the future studies that they are aiming for in their higher education.
Okay, that's great. And what are some of the things that you have noticed that students don't understand when it comes to this process? So how do you what are some of their expectations that you feel may be unreasonable or unrealistic?
Right.
And what would be your message to
Hmm.
people
Hmm.
who come into your office, thinking something, and now you have to kind of say,
Yeah.
actually, What have you noticed is the biggest misconception about
Correct.
this process that you have to address and educate the students about?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. A lot of times we struggle to, get at the same page because students are coming in with a lot of different expectations. The biggest problem I would say is not having complete document checklist. So students are coming at the last moment and they don't realize that nowadays universities operate in a very systematic way. And it's not just getting an admission offer. There is also, you have to apply for the visa. That is becoming more challenging, and it has a lot of formalities and SOPs that you need to abide by. So students who are coming at the last stage and they're expecting that they would get their admission offer really quick and everything would be smooth, no back and forth. That is, I guess, the biggest misunderstanding that they have at the start of the process. And also, they are slow to gather documents. So the very first interaction we have with the student after we have determined what institute they are good for based on their career aspirations, we send them a document checklist that these are all the documents you need to have for your admission from the university. Uh, Letters of recommendation could be difficult to get a hold of. Then same goes for experience letters. I mean, depending upon which country they are coming from, a lot of times it doesn't has a lot of details. Honestly speaking, it's more of a character certificate when they bring to us rather than an experience letter. So you would know that experience letter should have detailed description of what type of work they have done in what company, what was their designation, and if a few lines about how they could be a good fit for the future, course that they intend to undertake in a foreign country.
And
So I guess
yeah, yeah. Given that, when do you think students should start thinking about approaching somebody like you? So, yeah, let's suppose an intake is in September 2024. Um, when should a student who's interested in starting school in the UK or Canada at that date, when should they be coming to you to start this conversation?
correct. The sooner the better. But anything later than, so February 2024, this is ideal time, I would say. February, January, March, you need to reach out to us, get your options explored, see what destinations you can apply to, where are you eligible, and if not, what documents you need, and so on. So at least 6 7 months, I would say.
And in your experience, what type of students have you noticed that have the most difficult chance of getting admitted? So in terms of, so when you analyze a profile of the student,
Hmm.
so communicate to the audience,
Hmm.
um, you know, um, if you are of a certain profile, your
Yeah.
chance. So things like maybe gaps in education, GPA,
Correct.
stuff like
Correct.
that. So what's
Correct.
the
Correct.
best profile for somebody wanting to go into an undergraduate program or a master's program?
Correct. So let's differentiate. So categorize these two cases because for the undergraduate, ideally there should be no gap, because the transition should be smooth. As soon as you have completed your high school, you should be the very next academic year you should be in your college. A maximum 1 or 2 years of gap is allowed, and for even for that you have to give an explanation nowadays to universities that okay, you were out of college. Why so? Because that raises questions and concerns in the admission officer's mind that perhaps they were not very serious, they were never intended to go to college anyways, and now they're applying to a foreign country just to go there and work and stuff like that. So you should have ideally no gaps after your after your high school to get into college.
Hmm.
As far as postgraduate studies are concerned, over there obviously could be gap because usually students out of after college they graduate, they want to experiment with the job market, see what type of work they can get their hands on, and have a better idea of what they want to do as a specialization in their postgraduate. So there you should have work experience, documented work experience with salary slips ideally in case that is being asked, and at least an experience letter that states what type of work you have done, you were a full-time employee, and and it should also be relevant to the course that you're applying for.
And in
So
terms
that's
of probability of getting a smooth admit process for your admissions, we're talking about admissions.
yeah.
What is the cutoff for the GPA that you would talk about?
I would say 3 plus out of 4. 3.0 and above is really nice. That option that opens a lot of options for you. North American colleges are more strict. You would know better. I mean, US, Canada, it's more competitive. You have to have a 3+ GPA to be eligible for any. And again, I don't mean that you would be aiming for Ivy Leagues, but that makes you eligible at least in, first year schools in North America. When it comes to, UK universities, we have a whole spectrum where you can land an admission at least, even with lower GPA. But 3.0 and above is really nice to have. And that is what I would say students to at least try to aim for that if you want to keep your options open and if you want to have any chance with the scholarship, because
Mhm.
otherwise it becomes difficult. Yeah.
Right. And let's talk about scholarships. A lot of students,
Yeah.
based on our previous conversations, come to you asking about fully funded
Yeah.
scholarships. It
Yeah.
seems to be a big, big expectation that those things are just available to you. What would
Yeah.
be your comments on students who come to you and the first thing they say is, "Give me a fully funded scholarship,"
Correct.
you know,
Correct.
in
Correct.
Canada or the UK?
Yes. So definitely, Mustafa, students have expectations, and I would also agree to the fact that lately it has become really expensive, especially if students are going from countries like Pakistan, where the exchange rate has hit us really hard. So that becomes a challenge. But there are some options, fully funded options, but that is not with the university itself. It's independent organizations that are sponsoring students to for the uplift of the community, and those type of programs do exist. So Fulbright is a huge program that takes around, last time I checked, around 150 students for their postgraduate studies to top schools in USA. Then you have Shivning Scholarship for UK. You have Rhodes Scholarship for Oxford University. So those scholarship programs do exist, but I would be very honest here that the type of expectations that the scholarship recipients, their profiles need to be really, stellar in terms of GPA, not only GPA, in terms of the extracurricular work they have done, and they really need to show a strong connection with the type of work they are doing in their own home country, and how would a foreign degree benefit them in continuing with that cause. So that's why you see a lot of students going from Pakistan and pursuing public policy and healthcare programs in USA. Why? Because this is one area where we really lack, and with having more graduates having education in that field, they can come back and contribute to our economy and stuff like that. But universities are again competitive. They are partial scholarships, very few. They do give some international scholarships in UK, 2,000, 3,000 pounds. But again, applying early is important, and but having an expectation that you will be getting 50 or 60 or anything more percent of scholarship directly from the university, that's I guess an unrealistic expectation to have.
Yeah, and I've noticed that as well. It's I came through the Canadian education system, and
Hmm. Yeah.
a lot of students who are doing really well,
Hmm.
having sort of in the 90th percentile of grades, may have this expectation that since I am such a stellar
Hmm.
performer, that the school is going to finance my education, and they don't realize at the end of the
Hmm.
day,
Hmm.
schools actually don't fund
Hmm.
scholarships out of their pocket.
Correct.
They are affiliated with certain funds out
Hmm.
there
Yeah.
that want to, promote excellence. But very few universities actually have their own in-house scholarship program.
Correct.
Um, they might there might be some special bursaries for
Yeah.
performance that might give you maybe 25 to 30%
Hmm.
off.
Hmm.
But I think this expectation that a lot of students have is,
Hmm.
find me a fully funded
Yeah.
program, my grades are great. It doesn't
Yeah.
really work like that. So I
Correct.
think it's important to highlight that point as well. Another thing based on our previous conversations that we have discussed is this allergy to English language
Yes.
examination, tests, and
Correct.
a lot of people are coming to you saying,
Hmm.
find options
Yeah.
where I don't have to go through this exam.
Correct. Correct.
What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, talking about, if I have to share honestly my own personal opinion, it's simple that you're going to an English speaking country. Trust me, even if you are able to survive a university without having to take the English proficiency exam, what about the job market? I mean, it's competitive. Employers would only see their value if they hire you. Would you be able to communicate well and be able to manage things? So I would honestly say it's part of the process and they should respect it. Again, if they want to keep their options open, And especially if they're looking for some more competitive universities and top ranked universities, then they have to take the exam. There is no way out of it. You know, but there are some non IELTS options we have only in the UK. So that option is only with the UK and very limited colleges. So students should be mindful of the fact that if they want to go to a university of their own choice, then this is the exam they should take. And one more thing I would want to mention here, that nowadays it's not like the old times that you have to join a tuition or tutoring academy. There would be an instructor. You have to make sure that you're going daily, going through the lectures and stuff like that. There is a lot of tons of online resources available, and they're great. Moreover, I recently had the experience of taking IELTS myself, a computer-based test. It was smooth. The test was smooth. The experience was amazing, because nowadays we are more used to doing everything on our laptops, computers. So I guess the paper thing was a little challenge, reading from a piece of paper and listening to speakers. But on a computer-based IELTS test, it's a different game altogether. And with a little
Yeah.
bit of practice, students can do great. Yeah,
Yeah. In fact, I had to recently do a language exam myself,
right.
um, um, for something in Canada. I
Yeah.
had to get, and it required that. And you're right, the online exam. I mean, let's be clear, it is tough.
Mm.
It's not
Yeah, yeah,
easy, even
yeah.
for a fluent English speaker like
Correct,
myself. But I think when students like, it's worth caring
mm,
about getting
correct.
it right, not
Yes.
just for getting an admission into
Mm,
the school of your choice. It will also improve the chances for approval for your study
correct.
permits for both
Absolutely.
UK and Canada. And then
Absolutely.
down the road, if you are interested in transitioning
Mm,
from a temporary status as a student down to permanent
mm,
residency,
mm,
you know, it's critical. There's no way to avoid
correct. Correct.
an IELTS or a CELPIP because you need those language
Correct.
points to qualify for permanent residency. So,
Mm,
my big message to anybody watching
mm,
right now would be this is just like a
mm,
non-negotiable thing. You know,
mm,
just work with a coach. It's an
mm,
exam, study for it. And yes, you'll have to go through. It's annoying,
mm,
it's painful,
mm,
but ultimately it's worth it. And in fact, we care so much about
mm,
this requirement that we at Averou Immigration Services, as you know, we have affiliated ourselves with a fantastic coach as
yeah.
well. If you guys go on our website and under student immigration, there's a landing page for IELTS, and our affiliate coach is great. He's a Fulbright scholar himself, and he
Yeah.
has an online course that he administers over the course of, I think it's either 6 weeks or 12 weeks, depending on your
Mm,
timeline, 32 hours of instruction. He guarantees that
mm,
you will meet your target score. So that's, again, we wanted to make sure that we have an option like that for
yeah.
any potential clients that we might have, because we feel it's so important, right?
Correct.
hmm
Yes.
So finally, let's talk about on that note, right? Like,
Mm,
so
mm.
um, tell me about the difference between a conditional and an unconditional offer.
Sure, sure. So with UK, what they do, UK universities, that if, let's say, the document checklist is not complete, for instance, they see that letters of recommendations are missing, or let's say experience letters are missing, and oftentimes it's the IELTS requirement or English proficiency requirement that's missing. So back in the day, it used to be more of a norm that students would just submit their application online to any university without complete document checklist. And universities used to be courteous in the sense that they would give you a conditional offer, meaning it's conditional on you meeting the English proficiency requirement. And then whenever you submit your IELTS score, you would get an unconditional offer, which means that now you are eligible to apply for your visa and get the next steps done. But nowadays, I've also noticed a little change in this norm, that universities can even reject you. So they have a lot of load, and especially if you're applying late to universities, they would even reject you for not having a complete document checklist. So it's never a good idea to take it lightly and be casual about it, not having complete documents
Mhm.
while you're applying. So you should have it. Yeah.
And in Canada, it's a little bit different.
Hmm.
You don't really get unconditional offer letters.
Right.
Sorry, you don't really get conditional offer letters.
Hmm.
But so you will get an unconditional offer letter.
Right.
But typically, what happens is, obviously, if your documents are missing, you're not
Hmm.
going to get the admission letter. So
Correct.
it's
Correct.
either it's black and white there.
Hmm.
Specifically if your language
Hmm.
results are poor, or if
Hmm.
you know if you can't prove that you would be able to do the instruction in English, at an adequate level, they put you in what you call a foundation program, right?
Right.
And so you would have to kind of do maybe an ESL
Okay.
course for a semester,
Hmm.
and then uh, if you succeed in completing that, you then go ahead and get the transition into the full program, right? Uh,
Right.
that's how it works in Canada. And so for there, the study permit that you get issued
Hmm.
is
Hmm.
just for that foundation program, right? So you'll study
Right.
for 6 months, and then
Oh.
if you complete that course and then you move on to the full program, you have to apply to extend your study permit. So
Right.
it works a little bit differently on that. And so
Right.
I guess then what's the last stage in your process?
Yes.
Yeah.
So the last stage is the most important one. So after you have received your CAS for UK universities, which stands for Confirmation of Acceptance of Studies, so that's when you get your. This is the stage after you have received your unconditional offer, or as we say, LOA, Letter of Admission from Canada. Then you have to apply for the visa, and that brings me to my question for you, Mustafa. That I've been hearing some news about change in the policy for international students in Canada, and since it has been a very popular destination, students are concerned that what it actually means in the first place and how would it affect them. Is it, really that terrifying thing? Do they need to be worried about not getting admissions, not being able to fulfill their dream, or does it mean something else?
Yes and no. So look, to begin with, like historically speaking, the acceptance rate for visas in Canada
Hmm.
has been 60% anyway,
Right,
right?
right,
So I think in the UK it goes up to like 90-95% of an
correct.
acceptance rate. In
Yes.
Canada, it's never been that high, right? It's
Okay.
been 60%. So getting a study permit approved in Canada has always been challenging, right?
Right.
The requirements are much higher, and if you would like me to go through those details later on, I could. But typically, the acceptance rates have been, compared to the UK, low, right? So 60%
Right.
is historic. So now, um, I believe that these policies will make the acceptance rate tick up. We will see less refusals, but the requirements to be accepted have sort of become more burdensome for students. So
Right.
what are the changes that they've made?
Hmm.
The biggest change that our audience should know is that when you are applying for your study permit, one of the things that you need to prove is your proof of finances, right?
Yeah.
So for
Yeah.
that, you have to submit. You have to
Hmm.
pay your first year tuition if you are going through the student direct stream, which we can talk about later in more detail, or at least the first semester upfront if you're going through the non-student direct stream. But beyond that, you would have to show that you could support yourself in Canada or your dependents um, um, for up to 1 year. The minimum for that used to be $10,000. They have raised that now to $21,000.
Oh,
You are
that's almost double. Yeah.
So if you're applying as a solo person,
Hmm.
you
Hmm.
have to either present in your
Hmm.
bank accounts in Pakistan
Right.
or you know UAE or
Hmm.
Vietnam, like wherever you're
Hmm.
applying from.
Right.
You have to show that you have that money. It used to
Hmm.
be that
Hmm.
10 was the minimum, although we
Hmm.
always encouraged our clients to
Hmm.
show more.
Hmm.
But now
Hmm.
20 is the minimum, right?
Right.
So and you know so that is challenging.
Hmm.
And if you want to go through the student direct stream,
Hmm.
it wasn't just about presenting
Hmm.
the money in your bank accounts back home. You actually
Hmm.
have to deposit them into a
All
Canadian
of that.
PND account,
Correct. Correct.
which then kind of disperses that money to
Hmm.
you over on a monthly basis until it runs out after a year. So that's
Right.
number one. Number
Hmm.
two is, man, that they're actually putting a cap on
Hmm.
undergraduate students, right?
Oh.
Um,
Okay.
yeah. So there's always been a quota,
Hmm.
but in terms of overall immigration that Canada wants to see, but there wasn't really a hard cap, right? Now there's a hard cap on how many students can come per year. So what you're going to see is you're going to see universities closing intakes once they meet the cap. So if you are interested in going to Canada to study, you want to, again,
Hmm.
to your point, submit your application as early as possible so that
Right.
the intake doesn't close off because
Oh,
the university has met its cap or
I
the
see.
province has met its cap. Each
Yeah.
province is going to have a different cap level based
Okay.
their population and based on
Hmm.
their economic needs. So that's number two.
Hmm.
The third thing that they have done is, oh, by the way, on the cap
Hmm.
thing,
Yeah.
it does not apply to people who want to go and do their master's or their PhD. So there's no cap
Right.
on master's or PhD.
Okay.
There
Right.
is on postgraduate diplomas and
Hmm.
undergraduates. Essentially, Canada
Hmm.
is trying to curb the number of people who come into the country
Hmm.
to do postgraduate diplomas, certificates, and
Right.
undergraduate degrees. I think
Right.
that it's
Hmm.
been
Hmm.
kind of a breakneck pace
Right.
of people coming in over the last few
Hmm.
years, so they want to kind
Hmm.
of tamp that down.
Gotcha.
The third thing they've done, Qasim,
Hmm.
is that they have reduced sorry, they have made it sort of impossible. Like they have taken away the benefit that undergraduate applicants used to get, which was that
Right.
if their spouses came with them, those spouses
Hmm.
get an open
Yes.
work permit.
Yeah.
Now, an undergraduate student who wants to bring their spouse with them
Hmm.
cannot, that spouse cannot get a open work permit,
Gotcha.
right? Only the
Hmm.
main applicant will be
Right.
an open
Hmm.
work permit along with their
Hmm.
study permit
Hmm.
so
Hmm.
that they will be able to work, but the spouse won't be able to work. And I think they're
Right.
doing that because they want to discourage people at the
Hmm.
undergraduate level bring their
To
spouses,
bring. Yes.
right?
Yes.
However, on the bright side, the thing is
Hmm.
before it used to be a maximum of 20 hours per week that you could work.
Yeah.
I think they're going to increase that. They're going to change
Oh
it to
wow.
30 hours per week. Yeah.
Hmm.
So you could legally work in Canada as a student for up
Hmm.
to 30 hours per week, which is
Hmm.
considered to be full-time
Hmm.
work. Another thing that they've done is for master students, they have made this rule about postgraduate work permits.
Right.
Before, if you were in a one-year program, you would only
Hmm.
get a one-year postgraduate work permit.
Yeah.
And if your program was 1 year or more, you would get a 3-year postgraduate work permit.
Right.
Um, so for undergrads, that rules that undergrad, obviously, an undergrad degree is going to be 4 years, so
Hmm.
they will get a 3-year
Right.
graduate work permit. But for
Right.
master's students, they could potentially enroll in a 1-year master's program and end up getting
Hmm.
a 3-year postgraduate work permit.
Okay.
So that's fantastic,
That's
right?
good.
And I
Yeah.
think the bigger takeaway from all these policy changes, Custom, is that if you are considering to go to Canada to
Hmm.
study,
Right.
then you should not go for undergraduate degrees.
Right.
Get
Yes.
your undergraduate
Yes.
from
Yes.
Pakistan, do
Yes.
well, and then apply to
Yes.
master's program in Canada,
Right.
right?
Right. Right.
Um, yes, the financial requirement will still be
Hmm.
there. You still have to show
Correct.
20
Correct.
grand in your account, and if you're
Correct.
bringing dependent, that
Hmm.
math kind of increases even more.
Hmm.
Um, and by the way, we're going to be
Hmm.
giving out a slide deck
Hmm.
to our audience after this is done. So all the details for what exactly the amount will be. So just
Hmm.
really quickly, I can show you guys here. So this is this right here,
Hmm.
showing. So if you look at this chart on the right hand side,
Yeah.
um, one person is 21,000, right? And then a family of two is 25, and then all the way up to seven would be 54,611, right? And if there's more than 7 people coming, which I think would be an impossible application to be approved, it would be 5,559 Canadian dollars for each additional family member. I know there's some questions coming in to
Yeah.
our chat, and we will open it up for Q&A very soon. Okay,
Perfect.
so we're going to share this slide with you. It has a lot of great information here. We're not going to go through, too much of that. But in terms of the Canadian the Canadian study permit landscape, I would encourage people to go for a master's in Canada. Okay.
Right.
The chances of approval are higher. If you have a
Right.
gap, all you have to do is show work experience, so that's
Right.
fine.
Yeah.
You can go for a 1-year master's and get a 3-year
Yes.
diploma. And
Yes.
further on, for permanent residency, your points for education for a master's level are going to
Would
be
be
much
higher. Yes.
doing a bachelor's. So,
Correct.
so if you're somebody who really wants to go to Canada,
Hmm.
don't try to jump the gun and try to get in there at the graduate level. Go for the
Right.
master's level. What else you got for me?
No, nice. Yes. So one obvious question that a lot of at least Pakistani students ask us, that is SDS visa really better in terms of the approval rates?
I think it's a myth.
Yeah.
I think it's a
Okay.
myth,
Okay.
right?
Right.
I think a
Hmm.
lot of
Hmm.
people sitting in
Hmm.
Pakistan
Hmm.
working or
Hmm.
SDS
Hmm.
approved.
Hmm.
I guess right now
Hmm.
our
Hmm.
our main audience is Pakistani, so I'll speak to the
Yeah.
Pakistani audience.
Yeah.
There's a myth that you cannot get approved for a Canadian visa
Right.
if it's not through an SDS, if it's not through SDS. So
Yeah.
SDS is an option for
Right.
Pakistanis to utilize. It's not
Right.
mandatory, right?
Right. Right.
Um, it does
Hmm.
theoretically
Hmm.
improve your
Hmm.
chances of
Hmm.
approval because
Hmm.
it requires such a heavy
Hmm.
upfront investment,
Hmm.
financially. So you
Right.
have to open a GIC block or a block GIC account.
Hmm.
You have to
Yeah.
transfer that money from Canada,
Right.
from Pakistan to Canada. So that money doesn't stay with you. It needs to be
Correct.
transferred. And then you
Correct.
have to pay your first year of tuition upfront.
Hmm.
Okay.
Hmm. Hmm.
Once you do that, the
Hmm.
benefit is what? The benefit is you don't
Hmm.
have to necessarily show any
Hmm.
additional, finances for proof of
Hmm.
settlement funds.
Hmm.
Uh, Processing time does tend to be faster,
Hmm.
and in theory, it's supposed to be more persuasive for the visa officer to
Right.
see
Right.
an SDS application. But
Hmm. Hmm.
I don't believe so. I think really what
Hmm.
matters is
Hmm.
who your
Hmm.
consultant is and
Hmm.
what kind of job they're doing
Hmm.
to, your study plan. I think is more important than whether or not you
Hmm.
go through SDS or
Right.
non-SDS.
Right.
Um, True non-SDS
Hmm.
might take
Hmm.
more time,
Hmm.
but you can get away with only paying your first semester of tuition, and whatever money that you would have otherwise put into your GIC account, you can keep it in Pakistan, but it needs to
Hmm.
be liquid. It needs to meet some other
Hmm.
criteria
Hmm.
for,
Hmm.
authenticity. And I mean,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, we have to
Hmm.
convince the visa
Hmm.
officer that you do meet the
Hmm.
requirements. So
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
depends on the consultant. It depends on the quality of the application, how you put it together, how persuasive your study plan is. Have you
Right.
made the right choice? Have you made the right choice for your whatever you decided to
Hmm.
study? Does it make sense with what you want
Hmm.
to do, what you have done, et cetera, et cetera? So SDS or non SDS is
Hmm.
that sort of decision
Hmm.
is not
Hmm.
really what's going to make or break your application,
Hmm.
in my opinion.
Hmm.
A lot of people may
Right.
agree with me, but in my opinion,
Right.
uh,
Right.
I worked on so many applications that
Hmm.
went through the non-SDS route,
Right.
and
Right.
even though there were some
Hmm.
refusals, we
Hmm.
eventually got them
Hmm.
approved. So,
Right.
to me, the most important thing
Hmm.
is the other stuff, like your study plan.
Gotcha. So, Mustafa, that brings me to the next question, which I think is quite related to this. So, Averou Immigration is a regulated Canadian immigration consultant,
Yes.
which a lot of agents, as we call them, study abroad agents in Pakistan, are not regulated. They are not registered in Canada. So, what benefit does that bring to a student applying through a registered consultant versus a non-regulated consultant?
Yeah. Well, I mean, first of all, we are when we say we're regulated,
Hmm.
it means
Yeah,
like we actually have a governing body that monitors our actions, right?
correct.
And if we if it kind of appears that we're doing something
Hmm.
shady,
Yeah.
Our clients can document all the conversations and whatever,
Oh,
um,
right.
and submit a
Mm,
complaint directly to the CICC, which is the body that regulates us.
right.
And they would review the documents, and then they would
Mm,
make a determination on whether
mm,
we are not meeting our obligations to the
mm,
client, because there is a code of conduct that governs us. and
right. Right.
and if the client feels like, in our retainers, when we sign
Mm,
retainers with our
mm,
clients,
mm,
our obligations to the client are lifted right from the code of conduct, and they're very clear
mm,
there. So
mm,
so it's very transparent about like what the client can expect from us. And if there is a material violation of any
mm,
of
mm,
those breaches of code
mm,
of conduct, then there is a process for the
mm,
client to complain to our regulator, and
mm,
our license can be at risk,
mm,
behavior that I. So basically, we can't just do whatever we want. We're bound by
right.
the code.
Right.
That's number one.
Right.
Number two is, uh, working with the RCIC. You know, we are not incentivized to, get a student into a college by any means necessary.
Right.
Just
Right.
to kind of get a commission
Mm,
from the school.
mm,
We are also incentivized to make sure that because what is the product that we're selling? We want a
right.
successful result on a visa, right?
Correct.
And then, depending on what
Mm,
the client wants after
mm,
their
mm,
visa, where
right.
in terms of sort of permanent residency.
Mm,
So
mm,
working with an RCIC,
mm,
you will get a clear picture of what's possible and what's not possible.
right.
Especially
Right.
once you're
Correct.
in Canada,
Correct.
you know, we would not just tell you this is what you need to get your study permit. We will also guide
Mm,
you. Okay, this is
yeah.
when you apply for your postgraduate work permit.
Mm,
These are the requirements you must meet to qualify for
mm,
permanent residency. Do
mm,
you have a chance? Do you not have a chance?
mm,
Should you go for
mm,
a master's? Should you go for
mm,
undergrad? Looking at the longer picture,
mm,
right? And
mm,
a random consultant based in Pakistan
mm,
is just
mm,
going to, be concerned about,
correct.
okay, did he get the visa or not?
Yeah.
Or not? And then they're done, right?
Mm,
RTIC, who is concerned
mm,
about the
mm,
end journey, which is permanent residency, will
yeah.
give you a more holistic
Mm,
overview
mm,
of what's possible and what's not, so that the client can make an informed
correct.
decision. So our incentives are
Correct.
different. Um,
Yeah.
and then RCICs have an ability to have access to processes that a regular consultant in
Right.
might not have. For
Correct.
example, judicial review. So if we
Mm,
think that your application is really strong, and
right.
the visa officer is just being unreasonable, um,
Right.
essentially we are in a better position to handle refusal.
Correct.
In fact,
Mm,
I would say that addressing study permit refusal is
mm,
one of our strong suits in our
mm,
practice. I have
nice.
worked with many
Mm,
people who have had their Canadian study permit
mm,
refused, and
mm,
I have been successful.
mm,
Well, I mean,
nice.
our practice has been successful.
Very nice.
When
Very
I say
nice.
I mean Averou
Mm,
Immigration has been very
mm,
successful at getting
mm,
those refusals reversed.
mm,
And I don't
mm,
think a
mm,
consultant
mm.
sitting in Pakistan who is not licensed, because
Yeah.
there's some fantastic licensed consultants in Pakistan as well.
Right. Right. Right.
Somebody who's not licensed is not going to have access to
Mm,
those things.
yeah. No, Mustafa, thank you so much for sharing this experience, because this is completely unknown in Pakistan, that a consultant, doing a judicial review, which obviously they can't because they're not regulated. So that's a huge benefit that students can get. That's nice.
Yeah.
So we have some questions from the chat,
Yes.
and we can answer one by one. So the first one, I guess we have answered pretty much. It was asking about the study permit in UK, Canada. We explained the process, and I guess you said that you will also be sharing that document, right, for more details. And you can reach out to our team. Mustafa specializes more in, as by now you could tell, he specializes more in the Canadian study permits and all that. And we have other team members who specialize in UK and USA.
Well, I mean,
Okay, so yeah,
let's take his question.
sure,
Um,
sure, sure.
what would you say? Give us like five top tips for people applying for study permits. Okay, so I guess
Hmm,
this is the question that I should take, right?
hmm,
Um, okay. The first tip would be that when you are talking to an education
hmm,
consultant
hmm,
like
hmm,
Qasim, right? Think ahead. Think about. Don't just think about, okay, what's just going to get me into Canada. All right.
Hmm.
Think about what your plan is after you get to Canada.
Yeah.
You want to have a plan
Correct.
for the next 4 to 5 years, not just the
Correct.
next 4 to 5 months. So that would be my
Hmm.
first tip. Second,
Correct.
the most important thing when you're applying for a study permit is have a good study plan. A study plan
Hmm.
will make or break
Yes.
your application. And you want to be very careful about what course you are selecting. Don't
Hmm.
select a course just because it's easy to get into, because there might not
Hmm.
be an IELTS requirement. The GPA
Hmm.
requirement might not be that strong.
Hmm.
Just get in to fit in.
Hmm.
Think
Hmm.
about why you're taking
Hmm.
this course. How does
Hmm.
it actually help you? So
Hmm.
don't just go for whatever's available. Be strategic
Hmm.
about what you pick. The third tip is don't apply for undergraduate programs, right?
Right.
Go for a master's program,
Hmm.
or if you already have a master's, go for a
Hmm.
postgraduate diploma or
Hmm.
certificate. I would discourage, especially if you're going to Canada, to consider undergraduate programs. I think you're much
Right.
better off doing it in Pakistan,
Hmm.
and then
Hmm.
have the conversation now. Understand
Hmm.
what it's going to take you to get
Hmm.
into a master's program in Canada, and get that done as an undergraduate student in Pakistan. Understand
Right.
what you're going to have
Hmm.
from your
Hmm.
income, right?
Hmm.
Maybe you start saving money while you're
Hmm.
doing your undergrad,
Hmm.
right? This
Hmm. Hmm.
be
Hmm.
thinking
Hmm.
way ahead of time on these issues. Um,
Right.
and then finally, I would say that I guess my final tip would be work with a licensed immigration professional.
Hmm.
Don't try to do
Yeah.
it on your own. I think it's not
Hmm.
uh,
Hmm.
yeah, because every refusal on your record can make the next application
Correct.
more difficult. So
Difficult.
work with a professional. It's worth the investment.
Hmm.
I know a lot of
Hmm.
people in Pakistan, they
Hmm.
and not just Pakistan but everywhere, they're trying to
Hmm.
get the best value for money, or they want to
Hmm.
try to get away with
Hmm.
getting the job done by not
Hmm.
paying anything. But some
Hmm.
some things are worth investing in because
Hmm.
the
Correct.
return on that investment is so
Hmm.
great long term.
Hmm.
Okay, the next question
Mushba,
is
yes,
sorry.
this one. This is an interesting one. I know. The next one we have from Ashir. It's a different beast. The Ashir is asking us about the family immigration, but I do know that immigration is one area that your team is working in. So give us a little bit of an overview of why is Canada uh, willing to entertain and bring in so many immigrants, and why is this pathway? Why does
Well,
this pathway even exist?
right. Okay. Well, first of all, this, yes, at Averou Immigration, the firm
Hmm.
does permanent residency
Right.
work, as well as you know other types of visas.
Hmm.
Right now, on this topic, we're just
Hmm.
covering admissions and study permits. So
Right.
I'm not gonna get Usher too deep into
True. Yeah.
what the pilot project for New Brunswick is. If you would
Hmm.
like to know more about that,
Hmm.
um, somebody is going to give you a link to our landing page for Canadian permanent residency outside Pakistan. Osama, if you could please take a note on that. We'll send you a link, and you can book a consultation with us. And in that consultation, we'll be happy to discuss family immigration, and then also this pilot project that you're talking about in New Brunswick. If you could specify which particular pilot project you're talking about, that would be great as well.
Hmm.
Somebody from my team will send you a link. You can book a consultation and talk to us there. Okay,
Okay.
next. Osama Bukhari has a question, Qasim. I think you can take this one.
Yeah, yeah. So, Usama, an unconditional offer is when you have met all the admission requirements for the university, for the UK university. So, as I was mentioning earlier, that a conditional offer is one where your documents are not complete. Perhaps a letter of recommendation is missing, experience letter is missing, but in most instances, it is the English proficiency letter that's missing. So, universities would not reject you only because one document is missing. So, they would give you some time. So they will say, okay, otherwise your academics look great and we have given you an admission offer. But one element that is crucial for the admission eligibility is missing, let's say your experience letter or English proficiency. So get back to us with this. And they will very explicitly specify what requirement you have to fulfill. So, for instance, I've seen conditional offers which say that you have been admitted to the course of, let's say, Masters in Educational Studies in XYZ University in the UK, but you have to show us an IELTS certificate with 6.5 overall score with no less than 6. So you exactly know what piece of admission is missing that you need to meet. And then you get your unconditional offer. After that, you are ready to start your visa process, get your bank statement ready, and submit your IHS, international health surcharge, insurance payment, and then do the other formalities and move forward in the process.
Fantastic. Okay, the next question, I guess, would apply more to me. How does Canada assess the proof of financial support for study permit applicants? We kind of touched on this a little bit. Let me take you to the slide that talks about that specifically. Here we go. So some of things is okay. So if you go through the SDS route, you would need proof of a Canadian bank account in your name. And a guaranteed investment certificate, GIC. Basically, you need to transfer $21,000 into a Canadian account. That has to be in your name. That's one way to do it. You would also have to show proof that you've paid your tuition. If it's under the SDS program, it's going to be for the whole year. If it's non-SDS, we recommend a full year anyway. But there's no requirement under the non-SDS to do that. So you could get away with just paying for one semester up front. If you have a student loan, you would need some proof from the bank about that. Your bank statements for the past 4 months showing that you have these necessary amounts available to you in liquid form is one way the IRCC assesses your finances. Again, proof of paid tuition. If you've already rented out a place and you've paid rent on that, that would be great. And if somebody is sponsoring you, excuse me, like a parent or an uncle or an employer, a sponsorship letter with proof of their finances. Again, at least 4 months worth of bank statements, and we don't want to see the money come into the bank statement in lump sum. So there was just one big deposit one day, and all of a sudden now you have your money requirements met. They like to see a consistent history of deposits leading up to that amount. So again, starting early on this process is so important because you want to start to deposit money into the account that you're going to declare over the course of 6 to 8 months, leading up to the time that you're going to submit your application, so that when we look at the last 4 years, it shows a regular history of deposits. And if your sponsor is going to be putting up that money, then it would be nice to see they also follow the same best practice. Do we have any other questions here, or
Right.
is that?
Not in the chat so far, but Mustafa, my next question to you would be: what are some other areas where Averou provides services, as you slightly, and if you can walk us through that, what other topics we can have a seminar, webinar on that you think would be useful for your audience, your customers.
Thank you for that question. So yeah, absolutely. So we're going to be doing this every week, and we're going to pick a specific
Right.
topic
Right.
within the complicated world of Canadian immigration.
Right.
Now, I think the audience should know that Averou Immigration Service is a licensed immigration professional for Canada, and not necessarily the United States, UK, Germany, or Australia, which are also very popular destinations. So in terms of the immigration component of it, if you are interested in moving to Canada, then we are the right people for you. And on that front, we do everything. We can talk to you about your eligibility for visitor visas, for study permits, pathways towards permanent residency, and investment pathways towards permanent residency through investments. So if there are any,
Right. Right.
yeah, absolutely. So if there are people who may not qualify for direct permanent residency, or they might
Right.
not interested in going
Right.
to school to then find themselves a pathway
Correct.
to residency,
Correct.
then investing in Canada is a great way to do
Mm,
that. And there's many programs both at the
mm,
provincial and federal level that we are very familiar with,
right.
so we can provide
Right.
people with
Mm,
money to invest on how
mm,
best to do that.
mm,
so that not only do you have a great
mm,
um,
mm,
business setup in Canada,
mm,
but it's also putting you on a pathway
mm,
towards
mm,
permanent residency in Canada
mm,
for the applicant and their family. Um, you know, so all these types of things
mm,
we can talk about, and we will talk about
mm,
in
mm,
the coming weeks. Uh,
mm.
the next webinar, Qasim,
Right.
we're going to do is we're going to be talking about the category-based permanent residency,
Wow,
which is a new
that's
program.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a new permanent residency
Mm,
pathway that
mm,
Canada
mm.
started this summer. And
Right.
really, what it means is, in a nutshell, that if
Mm,
you are a uh, somebody who has a master's degree
mm.
or a bachelor's degree at minimum, and
Right.
you have more than 3 years of experience in
Mm,
certain specific professions
right.
in healthcare or
Mm,
science, technology, engineering, and math. All right, people who have that experience have access to an easier pathway to permanent residency in Canada. So we're going to be getting really into that and what that
wow.
means, and
Wow.
how people can be eligible for that. So that's going to be the
Wow.
next topic we're going to be talking
Wow.
about.
Yes, I do think that this would be a really interesting topic for our audience because, this is a hot topic nowadays, Canadian immigration, what's the pros and like, what are the do's and don'ts, how they should navigate their, options and so on. So I guess they would be really interested. And on that note, I would really uh, suggest our audience to follow our social media handles, Averou Immigration Service, to have more updates about our upcoming webinars and what topics we will be discussing, and we'd be more than happy to take your suggestions. So let's say there is any topic that you want us to talk on, have Mushtaba's
Oh yeah,
professional advice, then we would be more than happy to take that up. So I guess that's for today.
yeah.
um, I,
Time to wrap it
I
up.
hope I hope the audience enjoyed and they found it useful. And we'll be back next week with category based peer options in Canada.
Yeah, category
Very
basis.
excited about that. Really excited about that. Yeah.
All right. See you guys next week. Take
Thank
care.
you, Mr. Take it. Bye.
Bye bye.